Hi, this is Real World Audio and it's questions and answers time. And Ramsey asked about loudspeaker wattage. So basically, his question is about when someone says like this loudspeaker driver can handle 500 watts, what does it mean? And if you want, what does that entail? So basically, the wattage alone doesn't tell you how strong the magnet is. It won't tell you what is the bass response, how low it goes. It doesn't tell you how loud it plays. The only thing a wattage tells you is how many watts can that driver sustain without either melting the cone or, melting the voice coil or blowing the cone, so basically damaging the suspension. So basically when you read a wattage rating for a loudspeaker driver, it defines what is the peak power, the peak RMS power wattage that the driver can take without burning down or blowing up. So basically all that it takes, what it can handle in power. From the building standpoint, basically it requires two factors to have a certain wattage. One of them is the cooling capacity. So if you have, for example, a 500 watts rated woofer, then that woofer needs to dissipate 500 watts of heat, because when we have these monstrous power capabilities, about 99% of this power is going to be dissipated as heat. Just a tiny baby fraction is going to get used up as energy that's transmitted to sound vibrations. 99%, about something like that. So almost all of those 500 watts are going to be transferred as heat, and basically for a 500 watt rated driver, it needs to be built in such a way that 500 watts of heat are allowed to escape from the coil, from the very center of the driver, and the entire assembly can dissipate that much heat safely over an extended time period. And that's why you see like what is a peak rating and what is a sustained RMS rating. That's the difference between the two. So when you have a sustained rating, it means that much average heat can be transferred from the voice coil into the loudspeaker, to the driver basket, into the whole assembly. Part of it vented out. If you have a vented pole piece, that will tremendously help. And the peak power handling is basically you can add more power than the average handling capability, and it means that at an instantaneously your driver can handle it because the cone has the excursion. So the peak power rating tells you more about the suspension, that it means that much excursion, that specific power demands from the driver can be handled without damaging the suspension and the cone. However, that cannot be maintained over a long period of time because that much heat cannot escape from the assembly. It will build up, and over time, if you are not just using it as peak but sustaining it, heat cannot escape and your voice coil will melt. So basically, if you have a driver that's rated at 500 watts RMS sustained, and let's say 900 watts RMS peak, then it means that the suspension is able to handle the excursion that corresponds to 900 watts input power. but it is unable to dissipate that much heat over a longer period of time. So it means that there's a transient of 900 watt, it can handle it. But if you are plugging it into a meter and that meter reads like a solid 900 watt, which is the meter is averaging your input, and if it points to 900, it means that the cone will not be destroyed because the suspension can handle it, but your voice coil will basically be burning down in maybe seconds or minutes, depending on how conservative that rating is from your manufacturer. What you need is that have that meter solid on the 500 and not higher than that, because up to 500 it is capable to dissipate enough heat to prevent the meltdown of the voice coil. So basically that's what the driver wattage ratings are. They tell us the safety limits of how much wattage, how much heat can be tolerated by the driver, and the peak rating tells us that what is the cone excursion limit, and what is the transient limit, what is the so that above that, if we are trying to push like maybe let's say like 1200 watts instead of 900, it still will not melt down the voice coil. Voice coil is probably going to be able to take it if you have a really dynamic material. However, if you already were pushing like an average sustained 500 watts and then you give it a 1200 watt peak, then that will probably might melt it down as well because it's already overheated. However, if your sustained music material is, let's say, below 100 watt and it just has suddenly a 1200 watt peak, then the voice coil will not melt down, but you can't have many of those peaks following, like a second one, third one, and so on, because then you will reach the dissipation limit. However, if that 1200 watt is above that 900 watt peak rating, in that case what you will see is that your voice coil will be still intact. However, your driver surround will break because it's trying to push the cone beyond the limit of what the suspension can is rated for, where its compliance is, because the suspension it's basically holding your cone in place and it needs to flex and just eat up or comply with those massive fluctuations where your cone wants to move, and it has a certain compliance and it can take certain movements, but if you push it beyond where it can go, and it will just break and be ruined. So I hope that helps. This is what the wattage rating is about, the thermal and the mechanical limits of the driver, but it's not telling anything about any other features, about the fidelity, about peak SPL, bass handling, how the breakup modes are, nothing. It's just the physical limitations of how much power we can throw at the driver. So thank you, Ramsey, for this fantastic question. I believe this is a lot of people wanted to know about that, so thank you for asking it. It was an awesome question. So everyone, please like, subscribe, have an awesome day, and be careful with your drivers. Do not feed them more power sustained than what they are rated for, otherwise you will find out what these ratings are. So thank you guys, bye bye.